Have you ever felt, even if for a moment, that there is something beyond what you were taught? Have you ever had the strange feeling that there are truths hidden behind sermons, behind church walls, behind the history of faith itself? What if I told you that there is a spiritual technique as old as time, capable of freeing your soul from the invisible claws that bind it to this world? A silent, suppressed, hidden practice, not by chance, but by intention. Intention of those who from the beginning operate in the shadows to keep you blind, deaf, spiritually gagged. We live in a world where truth has become a forbidden commodity, where those who dare to speak about forgotten revelations are called heretics, where the gospel is often filtered by interests that have nothing to do with the kingdom of heaven. For a long time, hidden forces, which Gnostic texts called Archons, have worked to keep humanity in an eternal cycle of spiritual ignorance. They have no interest in you waking up. They don't want you to know the truth that sets you free, because when you awaken, you see, and when you see it, they lose control. But the Bible, yes, the Word of God itself, contains traces, fragments of a wisdom that was hidden. "My people perish for lack of knowledge," says Hosea 4:6. But what knowledge did the prophet speak of? Certainly not institutionalized, domesticated, controlled knowledge. He spoke of gnosis, from the deep knowledge that frees the spirit, from the direct encounter between the soul and the truth. There are passages that are almost never preached in the pulpits, words of Christ that sound like riddles, like keys to something greater. The kingdom of God is within you. What did he really mean? That this kingdom is internal, spiritual, inaccessible to carnal eyes? And why then has religion insisted on keeping us on the outside, waiting for a future heaven, when perhaps the true heaven is hidden within us, waiting to be awakened? In ancient Gnostic writings, persecuted, burned, silenced, we find echoes of a forgotten technique, a practice of reconnection with the divine spark that dwells within each human being. They spoke of a baptism of light, of a rebirth in the spirit which did not depend on temples, on men, on dogmas, but it depended on one thing, the truth, not just any truth, but the one that was hidden, the one that confronts, the one that frees, one that, once seen, can never be ignored again. If all this bothers you, if a part of you feels uncomfortable with what you are hearing, perhaps it is precisely because there is something inside you that recognizes this truth, a distant echo, a calling, a voice that has been trying for a long time to make itself heard amid the noise of doctrines and traditions of men. This video is not an attack on faith. Rather, it is a return to the purest faith, one that is born from revelation and not from repetition, the one that invites us to seek, to question, to not accept any truth that has not passed through the fire of the Spirit. "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free," said Jesus. But what if this truth is beyond what you were taught? What if it goes deeper than the words you've heard since childhood? Today, you will have access to something that few know about, a secret path, an old but living teaching, a spiritual technique that the Archons tried to erase from history. But like the light that insists on going through the cracks, this wisdom survived. And now, it's about to find you. The journey starts here. What you do with it is between you and Spirit. If at any point in these words something touched your heart, if an old doubt, a hidden discomfort, or even a forgotten spiritual memory began to emerge, I invite you not to keep it to yourself. Share. In the comments below, talk to me. Talk to us. Write down what has been troubling you spiritually. What kind of truth do you feel has been hidden from you? What biblical passages have you never fully understood? What questions are you afraid to ask out loud inside a temple? This is a sacred space not because there are walls and an altar, but because there is true searching. And where there is sincere search, there the Spirit moves. Leave your spiritual doubt in the comments, however strange or profound it may seem. Let me know if, in some way, this video sparked some reflection in you. Maybe something is breaking within your belief system, and that's okay. Sometimes it is necessary for structures to fall so that truth can be rebuilt on firm rock. If your faith is being shaken, confess it here in the comments. Sometimes, recognizing the shock is the first step to building a faith that is much more real, much more intimate, much more yours. And if you don't want to write anything elaborate, just write, "I want to know the truth." These 5 words are already a prayer. They are already a step. And if you believe that this message needs to reach more people, perhaps someone in your family, someone in your circle who is spiritually asleep, Share this video. Send it to that person who always asked you difficult questions but never found answers. Or for that soul that lives in silence but that you feel carries something deep within, a truth about to emerge. Oh, and if you've made it this far, if this message is making sense to you, if this content confronts you, leave your like now. This helps the video reach more searchers like you. And subscribe to the channel, because we still have a lot to reveal. This is just the surface. There are layers, forbidden texts, ignored prophecies, secret teachings that, together, can guide you to a faith that is more alive, more awakened, and more connected with the Creator's original purpose. And remember, this is not a video, it's a calling. The beginning of a journey that you need to walk with courage, with sincerity, and with a hunger for truth. Do you notice how certain things always seem out of reach? As if there is a greater truth haunting your soul, but it is never said, never shown, never taught in the places where we are supposed to learn about God? Throughout history, many seekers, sincere men and women, have felt this same restlessness, and some of them discovered something powerful, but too dangerous to be accepted by the religious and political systems of the time. They were called Gnostics. His writings were hunted down, burned, condemned as heresy, and yet they survived. Hidden, preserved by those who knew the truth could never be destroyed, only buried. Gnosticism is neither a modern sect nor a mystical philosophy invented in modern times. It is an ancient spiritual tradition, predating even the institutionalization of Christianity. Gnosis comes from the Greek and means knowledge, but it's not just any knowledge. It is a deep, internal, revealed knowing, a light that springs from spiritual consciousness, not from external religious structures. The Gnostics did not preach against God, but against the false god of this world, the one who pretended to be divine, but who in fact imprisoned creation in darkness and ignorance. This false god, according to Gnostic texts, is not the true and supreme God, the Father of light and love revealed by Jesus. He is an inferior, arrogant, limited being who believed he was the only one. This being, together with his legions of spiritual assistants, the so-called Archons, created an illusory reality, a prison for the human soul, a spiritual matrix. The Archons are spiritual entities that act as rulers of the lower spheres, controlling the mind, manipulating faith, distorting the truth. They operate with cunning, fueling corrupt religions, systems of power, and subtle lies disguised as light. According to the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "If those who guide you say, 'The kingdom is in heaven,' then the birds of the air will go before you. If they say that it is in the sea, then the fish will go before you. But the kingdom is within you and without you." This powerful statement deconstructs all dependence on external religious structures and points to an intimate truth vibrating within the human spirit. But why is this never taught to us? The Book of Enoch, rejected by institutions but revered by ancient traditions, also reveals secrets about spiritual beings who came to earth and corrupted creation, beings who introduced deception, violence, and spiritual dominance. They taught witchcraft, manipulation, occult practices, and led humanity away from the Most High God. These beings also intermingled among humans, giving rise to distorted bloodlines, to which the Archons remain linked to this day, operating behind political powers, control religions, and systems of spiritual slavery. The Pistis Sophia, another Gnostic text of profound spiritual value, reveals that there is a way to escape this cycle of imprisonment, but it is not a broad, visible, or easy path. It is a secret path which requires the awakening of the divine spark within us. Sophia, in this text, represents the fallen soul that seeks to return to its origin of light. She is you. She is all of us, lost in a world ruled by forces that obscure the truth but still driven by an uncontrollable yearning to return to the source. And this is where technique comes in, a silent spiritual practice, revealed only to those who truly seek. It does not involve visible rituals nor dogmas or human intermediation. It is a deep dive into consciousness, into inner presence, into rescuing the connection with the divine that lives within us. A process that the Archons fear, because when someone awakens, for real, they become free, and a being read VRE spiritually can no longer be controlled, manipulated, or used as a piece of a system. Many who heard these things for the first time found them strange, dangerous, even heretical. And maybe you're feeling this way right now. But I ask you, feel before judging. Let your soul respond, not your indoctrinated mind. Because there are things that the Spirit recognizes even before we can understand it in words. There are memories that are engraved deep within your spiritual consciousness, waiting just for a spark, a word, a memory, to awaken. And if you got here, it wasn't by chance. Most would have stopped sooner, but not you. You continued, because something inside you knew you needed to go further, that there is more than what meets the eye, that the Holy Spirit continues to whisper truths, even though institutions have tried to silence him with ready-made formulas and man-made doctrines. This Gnostic technique, this hidden path, will not be revealed to those who seek it simply out of curiosity. It reveals itself to those who truly wish to rediscover their spiritual origin, to those who are tired of just surviving within a dead religion, and want to return to living faith as a living, transforming, revealing flame, faith as connection, faith as freedom, faith like fire that burns everything that is a lie and reveals the essence that never ceased to exist. And you? Are you ready to question everything you've been taught? Are you willing to put fear and guilt aside to seek something deeper? If your soul is restless right now, if your heart is racing, if a tear wants to fall for no apparent reason, then perhaps you are already feeling the first signs that something bigger is starting to move within you. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth, not in men, but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. Write what touched you. It could be a doubt, a phrase that resonated, or even a single word. I woke up. This is already the beginning. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe to receive more revelations like this. The path is just beginning. Perhaps one of the biggest lies told to humanity is that everything that exists was created for our good, that the world, as we know it, is the direct and perfect result of God's will. But if we are honest, there is something that doesn't fit, something that doesn't close, something that screams inside the soul of those who observe with spiritual eyes. Like a whisper cutting through the veil of normality, an uncomfortable question arises. If the Creator is perfect, pure, light, and love, why do we live in a world surrounded by pain, injustice, oppression, violence, and falsehood? Why does it seem like evil dominates while good suffers in silence? The Gnostics dared to ask this question, and the answer they found was not easy to accept. That's why it was silenced. They spoke of fallen spiritual beings, entities that work behind the scenes of material creation. These beings are called Archons. The term comes from the Greek archon, which means ruler or prince. But these rulers are not from heaven. They are from the lower world. Spirits who have placed themselves between man and the Most High, who have usurped the original creation and shaped a false, corrupted reality, a spiritual prison so sophisticated that most live in it without even realizing it. Archons are not demons in the popular sense of the word. They are spiritual intelligences, cold, calculating, self-centered, that feed on human ignorance. They don't appear as grotesque monsters. On the contrary, they often manifest themselves as light, as wisdom, as tradition. They take on religious, ideological, and philosophical forms. They disguise themselves as angels of light, as the Apostle Paul warned in 2 Corinthians 11:14. And no wonder, for Satan himself disguises himself as an angel of light. This is a very important key to understanding who the Archons are. They don't need to own you. They just need to convince you that prison is freedom. These beings are the guardians of the lower celestial spheres. According to Gnostic texts found in Nag Hammadi, each of them governs a dimension of material reality, as if they were gates or barriers between the soul and its true spiritual home. The soul, upon incarnation, forgets its divine origin and begins to live under the influence of the Archons, who operate through the mind, emotions, ego, and even institutionalized religions. They create systems that distort the sacred, transform revelations into rigid doctrines, and replace the inner search with blind obedience. They want followers, not search engines. In the Apocryphon of John, one of the main Gnostic texts, we find a disturbing description. The chief Archon, called Yaldabaoth, is described as an arrogant being, born of ignorance, who declared, "I am God, and there is none other than me." A clear distortion of what the true God himself said to Moses in Ex 3:14, "I am that I am." But unlike the true God, this false creator does not know love. He is blind, blind to the upper light, blind to grace, and his creation reflects this, a divided world marked by pain, competition, vanity, and injustice. Archons operate within the human psyche. They influence thoughts, generate fear, reinforce limiting beliefs. They feed religious pride and spiritual guilt. They are present in politics, the economy, the media, but also in pulpits, in theological discourses, in preaching that places fear above faith. They have many names, many faces, but one purpose: to prevent the divine spark within you from awakening. Because if you wake up, they lose. The Bible, although edited and canonized under the control of institutions, still contains clues to this spiritual conflict. Paul wrote in Ephesians 6:12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the high places." Do you notice? He's talking about exactly that, of the Archons, of those who dominate the invisible system that imprisons the soul. But over the centuries, this revelation has been reduced to metaphors or simplistic explanations, as if we were just dealing with bad thoughts. But that's not all. It's much bigger. Archons build walls within their faith. They make you fear questioning. They make you think that doubting is a sin, that looking for yourself is rebellion, that listening to God's voice without intermediaries is dangerous. This is not the work of the Holy Spirit. This is spiritual engineering. This is manipulation. This is control. They even distort the image of God. They transform the loving Father into a merciless judge. They transform Jesus, the bearer of spiritual freedom, into a tool to oppress. They impose human rules in the name of holiness. They create structures that promise heaven but deliver prison. Have you ever felt like your faith was used against you? That the answers you received didn't feed your soul? They just kept you quiet, comfortable? This is also the influence of the Archons. They don't need to convince you of their error. All they need to do is keep you distracted with a supposed superficial truth. But not all is lost. There is an invisible war going on, and your soul is the disputed territory. Each time you awaken to the greater spiritual reality, each time you sincerely question, each time you feel there is more, you take a step out of their reach. And the closer you are to the true God, not the man-made God, but the Most High who is pure love and light, the weaker the Archons become before you. Now maybe you understand why certain messages are fought so hard, why certain truths never reach the pulpit, why texts like the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Thomas, and the Pistis Sophia were considered heresy, because they show the way, they expose the prison guardians, and they remind you of who you truly are, an eternal soul from the light with a divine purpose that goes far beyond just existing. You came to awaken, remember, and return. This is not just a spiritual theory. This is a war for your soul, and knowing who the Archons are is the first step to recognizing what is at stake. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth not in men but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. If something inside you moved, if a spiritual memory was activated, write it down. Write even if it's just one sentence. It could be something like, "I want to wake up," or "I feel like I've experienced this." This isn't just a comment. It's a sign, one step. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe to receive more revelations like this. We're just getting started. The next step will be even deeper. The largest prison in existence has no bars, no walls, no visible chains. The most efficient prison is one that makes the prisoner believe he is free. And this is precisely the spiritual condition in which a large part of humanity lives. An invisible prison, a precisely manufactured reality, fueled by distractions, empty desires and illusions carefully placed before our eyes. And perhaps most frightening, most people never notice. Just accept it. Just survive. Jesus, with His eternal wisdom and words that cross the centuries, said something that should make us stop everything and think, "And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:32. But free from what? Why would He use the word free if we were already free? Free from sin? Yes, but not only. Free from an invisible prison, free from deception, free yourself from the illusion of this world. The truth Jesus was referring to was not a set of religious rules. It was not a doctrinal system. It was something alive, present, pulsating, a truth that reveals the illusion in which we are immersed, a truth that shows us that this world, as it is presented is not the world as it was originally created. There is a distortion. There is a cosmic farce happening before our eyes. The Gnostics called this farce the illusory cosmos, a construction designed by the Archons to keep the human soul asleep, a kind of spiritual hologram, a matrix that simulates reality but is empty of divine purpose. And when we look around us, endless wars, systems of power based on domination, religions that kill in the name of God, endless distractions that empty the soul, it's hard not to feel that, in fact, something is deeply wrong. We keep running after things that we were taught are important: status, success, recognition, material comfort, and in the process, we ignore the silent call of our essence. The soul becomes suffocated by desires that are not its own. She gets lost in a sea of information, commitments, and noise that never stops. This is on purpose. The illusion is maintained so that you do not have time to look inside. Because when you look, you see. And when you see it, you start to wake up. And waking up is exactly what the Archons fear. They built a system that values the external and despises the internal, where appearance is worth more than essence, where having replaced being, where people are measured by their possessions and not their light, where truth became a product and faith a commodity. This illusion is supported by thousands of distractions: screens, news, entertainment, competition, fear, guilt. It's a complex network, and every strand of it is designed for one thing: keeping your conscience occupied and your soul asleep. But inside each person there still burns a spark, a trace of the divine, a forgotten memory that we were created for something greater. This spark is what the Gnostics called the divine spark, the fragment of God's light, imprisoned in a body of flesh, shrouded in illusions, but still alive. And it is because of this spark that there is still hope. Because no matter how strong the prison is, the light always finds a breach. Maybe that's why even when everything seems to be going well in someone's life, even with money, success, applause, there is still a void, a feeling that something is missing, which is not complete, who is not awake. This emptiness is not a defect. It's a sign. It is the soul trying to remember something that has been forgotten, trying to break the illusion, trying to get home. Jesus, when he was among us, did not just come to teach good deeds. He came to reveal a kingdom that is not of this world. He said, "My kingdom is not of this world." John 18:36. And this sentence, if taken seriously, changes everything. If his kingdom is not from here, then the system that governs this world is not his. And if it's not his, whose is it? This world is governed by principles that often contradict the true gospel. He values the ego. Jesus taught humility. He exalts power. Jesus exalted service. He promotes fear. Jesus called us to faith. He binds us through guilt. Jesus frees us through love. It's as if we were in a game of mirrors, where everything seems right, but is reversed. Spiritual imprisonment does not happen all at once. It is built slowly from birth. The child is taught to compete, to adapt, to follow what others say, not to ask questions, to trust men more than his own spiritual intuition. And when she becomes an adult, she is already completely inserted into the system, working, paying bills, trying to fit in, but often spiritually empty. And the worst, thinking this is normal. But the truth sets you free, and not just any truth, the inner truth, the truth revealed by the Spirit, the one that burns inside, that generates conflict with everything that seemed right, that questions what was accepted by inertia. This truth is not taught, it is awakened. And when she wakes up, nothing will be the same again. Many prefer to remain in the illusion because it is comfortable. It does not demand change. It allows a superficial life where everything seems to be under control. But those who seek the truth must be willing to lose all certainties, to find true faith. And this true faith is not based on repetition, but on revelation. Have you ever had that moment when everything around you seems fake? When did you look at life and feel like you were living something that wasn't yours? That he was following a script he didn't write? These moments are precious. These are cracks in the matrix. They are spiritual windows opened by divine grace to remind you, you are inside a prison, but there is a way out. And this exit is not out. It's in. That's why Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." Luke 17:21. And that is why the illusion needs to be dismantled. Because as long as we believe that everything that exists is what the eyes see, we will remain spiritually blind. And it is this blindness, that keeps the Archons in power. But when the soul begins to see, even if little by little something changes, the world loses its artificial shine. Men's words lose strength. Ready-made truths no longer satisfy. And then the search begins, not for a new temple, a new religion, a new doctrine, but for something real, alive, divine, something that cannot always be explained but that is felt, that pulses. What a call, that burns, the truth. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth, not in men, but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. Write in the comments if at some point in your life you also realized that the world around you seemed like an illusion. It can be a simple phrase like, "I saw the scam," or "I feel like I'm awakening," when this helps strengthen the connection between seekers like you. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe to receive more revelations like this. We still have a lot to discover together. The next step will further challenge what you believe to be true. Have you ever felt like you don't belong in this world? Have you ever walked among people and even surrounded by voices, sounds, and stimuli, had the strange sensation that you are out of place, as if something inside you is constantly trying to remember who you really are, where you came from, and where you're really going? If you've ever felt this deep discomfort, this silent spiritual discomfort, then perhaps your soul is trying to awaken. Perhaps it is the divine spark that still burns in you, even if it is muffled, even if it is forgotten, even if it is discredited by everything and everyone. Gnosticism reminds us of something that institutionalized religions have tried to erase, that there is a part of God within every human being, not as a pretty metaphor or an abstract idea, but as a concrete spiritual reality, a living, sacred, eternal presence, which the Gnostics called the divine spark, the hidden spark. This spark is what connects us to the true God, the Most High God, who is beyond the physical heavens, beyond the material world, beyond the false creator who imprisons creation in the nets of the Archons. When a human being is conceived, he carries this spark with him. She is the breath of God that makes you more than flesh, more than mind, more than a body with desires and needs. It is this spark that makes us capable of missing something we have never seen with our eyes. It is what causes that nameless anguish, that search for meaning, that thirst for something that the world simply cannot satisfy. And the truth is that this world, this illusion created to distract us, was designed to make you forget the existence of this inner light. The Archons, by keeping humanity asleep, also try to extinguish or cover up this spark. They do this from childhood, through the structures that shape the way we think, feel, and believe. They create an image of divinity outside of us, distant, inaccessible, and say that only through other men can we reach it. In doing so, they nullify the sacredness that exists within us. They make us doubt our own spiritual worth. They take us away from the source. But Jesus didn't just come to teach us how to love. He came to rekindle that spark. He said things that challenged the limits of religious understanding. He said, for example, in John 10:34, "Is it not written in your law, I said you are gods?" A direct quote from Psalm 82. It spoke directly to the human spirit, reminding everyone that we were created with divine spiritual DNA. This is not heresy, it's a revelation. But when spoken by mouths that do not belong to the system, it becomes dangerous. The divine spark is what makes us conscious. It is what makes us reflect on good and evil, on eternity, on the destiny of the soul. She's the one who makes us cry for things we don't understand. That moves us to help even when we are tired. That makes us feel something strong when we hear a spiritual truth that breaks the veil. It is the language of the spirit that is above words, and even when forgotten, it never dies. That's why so many of us feel like something is missing. We feel like there is a calling, a small voice that leads us to places we have never been, to texts we have never been taught, to questions no one wants to answer. That voice is the spark wanting to grow, wanting to turn into flame, wanting to remind us that we are not of this world, that we are eternal in essence, that we came from the light, and that to the light we must return. In the Gospel of Thomas, and Jesus says, "If you bring to light what is within you will save you. If you do not, what is within you will destroy you." This is perhaps one of the most profound and revealing lines of all, because it talks precisely about that. The inner light, the spark, the truth spiritual aid that cries out to be revealed. She is the key. She is the way, but it needs to be brought to consciousness. And how do we do this? Through sincere search, from inner stillness, of true prayer, not that done out of obligation or repetition, but that which arises as a cry from the soul, through spiritual silence, the rejection of manipulative systems, the courage to look within. The spark needs space to expand. You need truth to nourish yourself. It needs faith, not blind, but awakened. This is why the Archons work so hard to keep you in conflict with yourself. They make you doubt your intuition. They make you believe that you are not worthy of hearing God's voice directly. They say you are too dirty, too small, too imperfect. Lies, all lies, because God does not breathe his essence into something he despises. He breathes on those he loves, and he breathed into you. This spark is not in you by chance. She is your true self. It's what's left when everything else is taken away. The world will tell you that this is arrogance, but it's not. It is humility to recognize that the sacred lives in you, not by merit, but by origin. It is humbling to remember that we are children of the Most High and not condemned creatures, that we were created to reign with Him, not to crawl under the yoke of fear and guilt, that we were made in the image of the invisible and not in the image of human religions. Maybe you felt that spark at unexpected times, in a tear that fell without explanation, in a shiver when hearing certain words, in a dream that seemed more real than waking life, in a sudden feeling that there is something more. This is not imagination. This is the truth knocking on the door of your spirit. And now, more than ever, this truth needs to be heard. The world is getting noisier, but the spark still whispers. And those who learn to listen will find their way back home. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth, not in men, but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. Write sincerely. Do you feel that spark? Have you ever felt this inner calling even without understanding it? Comment something like, I feel the light inside me, or I'm remembering who I am. This helps keep this conversation alive and inspire others who are also awakening. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe to receive more revelations like this. We are just beginning to touch the deeper layers of the spirit. In the next section, we will explore something even more hidden, the secret path that frees the soul from the domains of the Archons. If there is a force that the Archons fear, it is not outside. It is not in temples, sacred buildings, or religious titles. It's inside you. It is in your awakened consciousness, in your ability to look at yourself with the eyes of the spirit, in your sincere search for something that goes beyond the veil of appearances. This force is Gnosis, a hidden knowledge, not because it was made for the few, but because it was hidden from the many, a knowledge that does not come from books, but from inner revelation, an awakening that begins when you stop repeating what you heard and start listening to what God whispers within you. The Gnostic technique is not a mysterious esoteric ritual, nor a secret practice accessible only to the enlightened. It is, above all, a movement of the soul, a return inside, a journey of reconnection with the light that the Archons tried to extinguish. It is made up of 3 essential pillars: self-observation, deep meditation, and conscious invocation of inner light. Self-observation is the first step, and it is also the most difficult because it requires silence. And silence is something this world hates. The system is designed to keep you distracted, to fill your mind with voices, screens, urgencies, to-do lists, imported desires. All this so that you never really observe yourself. But Gnosis begins when you stop the noise and start paying attention. In yourself, in your thoughts, in your feelings, in how you react, where you get lost, in who, in fact, is commanding your life. Is it the divine spark? Or are the impulses programmed by this spiritual control system? Observing yourself is like shining a flashlight in the darkness itself. It's having the courage to look inside without judgment, but with discernment. And little by little you begin to realize that many ideas that you thought were yours were actually placed on you. That many reactions, fears, thoughts, and guilt did not come from above. They came from the invisible programming of the Archons. When you begin to see yourself truthfully, something begins to break within the illusion. Because where there is light, the shadow loses strength. But self-observation is not enough. You need to dive deeper, and that's where meditation comes in. But I'm not talking here about meditation emptied of spiritual meaning that the modern world has transformed into relaxation technique. I speak of meditation as a living prayer, as an act of connection with the divine, as an open door between the human spirit and the sacred presence of the true God. It is standing before God in silence, not to ask, but to listen. It's letting the soul speak without words. May the heart reveal what the mind cannot reach. In Gnostic texts, meditation was seen as the state of receptivity of the soul. It is in this state that revelations come, not from the outside, but from the inside. The spirit speaks to the one who stops the noise, and when the soul quiets down, it begins to hear things that have always been there, but that the agitation of the mind never allowed to be perceived. Sacred names, inner visions, memories of another reality, flashes of forgotten light. It is in this dimension that the spark begins to become a flame, and the flame, voice, and the voice, path. The third part of this technique is the invocation of inner light. And here is a turning point. Most people pray to a distant God, projected outside of themselves, hoping for something to come from heaven. But the truth is that the kingdom of God is within, and the invocation of light is precisely this conscious call that arises from within. A deep request for the light that dwells within you to be activated, guided, expanded. It is when you declare, with living faith, I am the temple of the living God, and begin to act, think, feel, and live based on this truth. The invocation can happen in silence or in words. It can be done with simple phrases, but loaded with spiritual power. Like, for example, divine light which dwells within me awakens now, or may the truth within me be greater than the illusion that surrounds me. You can create your own prayer, as long as it comes from the soul. The most important thing is that it is done with intention, with faith, with delivery. This technique does not have a rigid formula, because the path of the Spirit is unique to each person, but it needs to be practiced consistently. Archons do not retreat with a prayer. They retreat with continuous spiritual presence, with surveillance, with persistence, with an awakening that is renewed every day. Therefore, Gnosis is not an event. It's a process, a lifetime of returning to the sacred interior. In the texts of Pistis Sophia, we see descriptions of the falling soul and the rising soul. We see how divine wisdom is sought by those who do not conform to darkness, how the light responds to those who cry out for it sincerely, and how the way back requires spiritual effort. The Gnostics knew that waking up was dangerous, because waking up means seeing everything as it really is. And when you see it, you can't pretend you didn't see it. It's no longer possible to live in your sleep. Therefore, this technique requires courage. It forces you to confront the lies you've believed. It forces you to leave behind comfortable faith, ready-made truths, memorized answers. She invites you to enter the desert of the soul, where there are no distractions, but there is truth, where there are no human guarantees, but there is a divine presence. And if you are already on this path, if you feel that something has started to awaken within you, know that you are not alone. There are others like you, spread around the world, people who, without knowing each other, share the same calling, the same thirst, the same longing for home. We are pilgrims of the light, fragments of the Most High, souls in search of return. And the more we awaken together, the harder it becomes for the Archons to maintain control. Maybe you're wondering, but what if I'm making this all up? What if I'm imagining it? This is the doubt they put in you, because they know that the first step is always the most fragile. And if they can stop you there, they will do everything they can to make sure you never go any further. But listen with your heart. No one imagines a thirst that doesn't exist. If you feel like something is calling you inward, don't ignore it. Reply. The technique is there. The path is before you. The choice is yours. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth, not in men, but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. Write, I want to awaken the light in me, or Gnosis calls me. If you felt something reading this, if something moved you, your comment could be the beginning of a new cycle, and it could also inspire others to begin the journey. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe to receive more revelations like this. The next step will reveal why this technique was hidden and who benefited from its omission. The truth is being restored, and you are part of it. Have you ever wondered why so many spiritual truths seem to have been lost to time? Why do certain biblical passages sound like riddles, while others are repeated over and over again, as if they were the only valid ones? The answer may lie where many have never dared to look, in spiritual censorship conducted by invisible forces, but also by human hands, motivated by interests that go far beyond faith. And if you have been on this journey so far, you already understand that we are dealing with something much bigger, with an invisible war, fought not with weapons, but with information hidden, distorted, or erased from history. Since the first centuries of the Christian era, a silent battle has taken place between two forms of spirituality, one focused on control, dogma, hierarchy, and the other focused on inner awakening, direct contact with God, freedom of the soul. The latter, represented largely by Gnostic teachings, was considered dangerous, and not because it contains lies, but because it points out truths that liberate, which weaken the structure of spiritual domination created in this world. The Archons, operating behind religious institutions, needed to ensure that this technique of inner awakening, gnosis, was forgotten, discredited, or completely destroyed, and they succeeded. For centuries, the world lived under a unified, standardized theology that eliminated any dissenting voice. And this was no coincidence. It was by strategy, because those who awaken do not bow down. Those who see with the eyes of the Spirit cannot be deceived. Those who know the inner light no longer need the darkness of intermediaries. History shows us how this happened, and one of the most impressive examples is the Nag Hammadi Library, a set of manuscripts discovered by chance in 1945 in a cave in Egypt by a local peasant. What was found there was not just old paper. It was a spiritual treasure buried nearly 2,000 years ago, hidden with purpose. Among the texts were the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Apocryphon of John, the Pistis Sophia, among others. All of these writings carry a deep, direct, revealing spirituality that places human beings before God without the need for dogmas, rituals, or external authorities. But why were these texts hidden? The answer is simple. They were a threat. While official church councils were defining which books were inspired and which should be excluded from the canon, voices like these were being silenced. Gnosis taught that the kingdom of God is within the human being, and that salvation is not obtained by blind obedience but by revealed knowledge, by spiritual awakening. And this directly confronted the structure that was being set up, a hierarchical church with fixed dogmas, with a system of mediated forgiveness, with truths centered on authorities. These texts were not just left aside, they were persecuted. Its copyists were hunted down, its schools closed, its teachings ridiculed as heresy. And when the persecution intensified, some brave men and women decided that knowledge could not be destroyed. They buried copies of the manuscripts in clay jars, as was done in Nag Hammadi, hoping that one day at the right time, they would return to the light. And they came back. Because the truth never dies. It just hides until it finds prepared hearts. The destruction of Gnostic texts and the persecution of their practitioners were not isolated acts. They were part of an intentional process of spiritual control. For centuries, any knowledge that led human beings to look within themselves with spiritual autonomy was opposed. The inner search was replaced by mandatory confession, the direct connection with God replaced by intermediation, meditation and spiritual silence replaced by mechanical repetitions. The temple of the Spirit was replaced by walls. Spirit fire was exchanged for rules. And the technique that could awaken millions has been hidden in the shadows of history. What's more, by destroying these teachings, not only was ancient wisdom lost, human beings' own spiritual identity was erased. People no longer knew who they were. They began to see themselves as sinners by nature, separated from God, unworthy, small. This is not what Jesus taught. This is not what the Holy Spirit reveals. This is what the Archons needed you to believe, to maintain dominion over your soul. But something is changing. The veil is tearing again. We are living in a prophetic time where what was hidden begins to be revealed. And you are part of it. By hearing these words, by allowing these truths to touch your soul, you are going against an entire system that was created to keep you asleep. And this simple act is already a step towards the light. The same light that those manuscripts tried to preserve. The same light that the Gnostics lived. The same light that lives within you, waiting for that moment of reconnection. That's why it's not talked about in churches. This is why these texts were never read in services. This is why so many are afraid to bring up this subject. Because it's real. Because it's powerful, because it is transformative. The G technique Gnostica, this journey of self-observation, deep meditation, and invoking the light within, has been hidden because it is the key to the liberation of the soul. And those who dominate this world, as we have already seen, do not want a free humanity. They want obedient servants, not conscious children. They want spiritless rituals, not living faith. They want volume, not depth. They want followers, not awakened ones. But the good news is that the spark never completely goes out. Even buried under centuries of deception, it is still there. Even surrounded by silence, she continues speaking. Even hidden, she continues to wait. And now, in this time of revelation, she is calling you. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth, not in men, but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. Write, "The truth cannot be buried," or "The light has shone again." Your comment is not just an outburst. It is a sign that you are awakened and connected to this spiritual restoration. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe to receive more revelations like this. In the next step, we will understand what happens when this light begins to grow within us, and what the Archons try to do to stop it. Are you ready? Let's continue. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to live with a free soul, not just marked by future promises or hopes, but aware of your own inner light, breathing divine freedom with each awakening? When the divine spark that has always resided within you begins to ignite, even in the midst of internal conflicts, deep doubts, or external criticism, something changes forever. The world remains the same, but you are no longer the same. You start to see with different eyes, feel with another intensity, live with a new meaning. This is the fruit of awakening, the liberation of the soul while still alive. One of the first signs many feel is an inexplicable inner peace, a serene calm that does not depend on external circumstances. Problems continue to exist, bills to pay, difficult relationships, daily challenges, but the internal noise diminishes, the fear loses strength, the anxiety slowly dissolves. Instead of reacting to everything, you start responding with awareness. Instead of living on autopilot, you act with spiritual intentionality. This tranquility is not the result of ignorance or denial of reality, but of the understanding that there is something deeper operating behind appearances, something eternal, incorruptible, that provides support when the world shakes. With this awakening, life gains a new purpose. What once seemed empty, the incessant search for comfort, status, approval, loses its shine in the face of what really matters: the truth, the light, the connection with the divine that lives within you. Through this reconnection, you rediscover your spiritual mission: to truly love, to serve authentically, to live with integrity. Every action, every choice, starts to carry meaning. Small decisions stop being just survival and become expressions of living faith. And this purpose is not based on dogma or external rules, but on intimate communion with God, guided by inner light, spiritual intuition, truth revealed in the heart. Another visible fruit is the Bla's awakening of consciousness, the expansion of the perception of spiritual reality behind appearances. You begin to see the deception in the empty words, in the illusory promises, in the power structures that exploit faith. Where you didn't see before, now you see. When someone talks about salvation with chains, you feel that it is not about freedom. When someone sells easy promises, you feel the weight of the deception. When doctrines suffocate the spirit, you feel that God is not in them. This awareness does not breed arrogance. It breeds discernment. And discernment is strength. It allows you to choose wisely, to reject what corrupts and to embrace what truly liberates. Faith, when awakened, stops being a set of rules written by men. It becomes a living, intimate, transformative practice. You experience communion with the Creator without intermediaries, not through vows, not through rituals, not through sacred portals, but through your own soul that rises in deep prayer, in sincere meditation, in conscious invocation of the light that is within you, and that faith bears fruit: genuine compassion, selfless love, real forgiveness, spiritual righteousness. Relationships transform. You free yourself from guilt, fear, external dependence, and it becomes a vehicle of light, an instrument of peace, a living witness to the truth that awakens lives. With awakening, there also arises a constant and true hope, not based on fragmented promises, full of doubts, but on the inner certainty that God is real, that the soul is eternal, that the divine purpose is fulfilled. This hope does not disappoint because it is fueled by personal spiritual experiences, inner visions, intimate revelations, sensations, that words cannot explain. Hope stops being something distant and becomes daily fuel. It is born within you and illuminates the path, even when the spiritual struggle is difficult. And don't think that this liberation manifests itself only in the spiritual. Often, you begin to reflect on your material and emotional life. You begin to discern toxic situations, to cut bonds of lies, to choose relationships that feed the soul, to work to build and not to destroy, to seek spiritual prosperity before material prosperity, and to prosper in both with balance. The inner light guides your steps, your decisions, your worldview. And when that happens, you know, you are no longer alone. God walks with you. The truth that sets you free sustains you. But perhaps the most impressive of all the fruits, and the one that many cannot describe in words, is the freedom to be yourself before God and men. There are no more masks, no more conformity, no more fear of spiritual judgment. There is sincerity, there is intimacy, there is genuine vulnerability. You discover who you truly are, an eternal soul, worthy of God's creation, called to reign in spiritual freedom. And this freedom does not produce empty rebellion, but conscious faith. It does not create pride, but transformed humility. It does not generate division, but reconciliation, first within oneself, then with one's brother, then with the world. When the soul awakens, what was taboo becomes enlightenment. What was pain becomes learning. What was darkness becomes clarity. And your once fragmented life begins to align with divine purpose, not because you are chasing rewards, but because you are responding to an inner calling, a call to live as a child of the light, aware of spiritual reality, vigilant against the deceptions of the Archons, faithful to the truth, faithful to the light. If you felt something like this, a flame that started to burn, a memory that resurfaced, a desire for freedom that won't go away, know that this is no coincidence. It's your spirit awakening to life. It is God reminding you of your origin. And if you've read this far, perhaps this is the ideal time to respond. Take a step of faith. Proclaim the light within you. Allow the liberating truth to begin to blossom from the inside out. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth, not in men, but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. Tell us if you have noticed signs of liberation in your life, even if subtle, even if silent. It can be just one sentence. My soul is waking up, or I feel the light guiding me. Your comment could be the trigger for change for someone who is also searching. And if this message spoke to you, subscribe to receive more revelations like this. We are just at the beginning of this journey of liberation, and the best is yet to come. You've come this far, and this point isn't just any closure. It's the threshold, the moment of choice, the spiritual crossroads that decides whether your soul will continue sleeping, tied by the invisible chains of illusion, or whether it will truly wake up and walk towards freedom. The choice is in your hands. You can continue living like many, accepting the lie, conforming to what they said is normal, repeating the same empty formulas, living for the world. Or you can say, enough, and seek the truth that frees you, the truth that burns inside you, but has been silenced for so long. Imagine for a moment a life where you are no longer a slave to fears, empty cries, suffocating guilt, constant anxiety. A life where your soul breathes, free, where your days no longer revolve around appearances, religious duties, human expectations, but of real communion with the divine, of an intimate living faith that pulses with the light that God breathed into you, where every step, every word, every decision is born from the spark that has been rekindled. This life exists. It's closer than you think. It starts the moment you choose to wake up. You will not become perfect. This is not about perfection, but about sincerity, about coherence between what you feel inside and what you experience on the outside, about spiritual honesty, about walking with the eyes of the soul awake, knowing that your body lives in this world, but your essence yearns for eternity. When the soul awakens, the world does not disappear, but its vision changes. You begin to see beyond the smoke screens. You notice the control mechanisms, the whispers of deceit, the empty promises, and you choose not to give in anymore. You choose to walk towards divine freedom, with your feet firmly in your eternal purpose, with your conscience clarified by the inner light. This awakening brings real fruit. There is peace, a peace that does not depend on circumstances. There is purpose, a spiritual mission that transcends the immediate. There is discernment, the ability to see the deception behind the masks. There is living faith, a direct connection with God, without intermediaries. There is courage, to question, to break, to rebuild. There is love, a love that springs from truth, not from empty rituals. There is freedom, the freedom of the soul, the freedom to be who you were created to be. But achieving this requires a conscious decision, a decision that requires courage, dedication, and vulnerability. Because waking up hurts. Awakening shakes what was built with lies. Awakening exposes fears, scars, lies you've believed about yourself. It demands that you give up human certainties to embrace divine truth. It demands that you accept, perhaps everything you have known about God to date is just the draft of a deep faith, and that true faith is within, hidden, but alive. And you? Are you ready to make that choice? Are you ready to leave behind the illusion, the comfortable, the predictable, to enter the difficult but liberating path? Are you ready to listen to your soul, to honor the divine breath that gave you birth, to walk with spiritual authenticity? If the answer is yes, if something in you is restless now, if your spirit feels the call, then take the step. Declare, I want to free myself. Comment on these words now and begin this new journey with awakened faith. And don't hold back what you felt. Share this video with the one you love, with that person who seems trapped, who can't explain the emptiness, but who you feel is searching for something more. Maybe this will be the spark that will wake up another soul. Perhaps this call will come at the right time for someone very dear to you. Share, because the truth was not meant to be hidden. The truth sets you free. The truth transforms. And if you felt this message speaking to your heart, if you notice this journey of awakening, then subscribe to the channel, because there is still a lot to reveal. There are still depths to be explored, secrets to be revealed, light to be brought to consciousness. That's just the surface. The journey continues, and you are invited to walk alongside us. May this revelation lead you to seek the truth, not in men, but in God Himself. Have you ever seen something similar? Comment below. Write sincerely, I want to free myself, and allow this decision to be the beginning of a new life.